Beneath the endless sands of the Sahara lies a secret the world was never meant to find. Satellite scans have revealed patterns, not random dunes, but the outlines of streets, walls, and an ancient city lost to time. Who built it? How did it vanish beneath one of the harshest places on Earth? Stay with me, because what's buried here could rewrite the history of Africa itself. For centuries, the Sahara has been seen as nothing more than a sea of sand, vast, lifeless, and unchanging. But modern technology is proving otherwise. Deep beneath these dunes lie the ruins of what may have once been a thriving civilization, hidden for thousands of years. Archaeologists are calling it one of the greatest mysteries of Africa, a lost city that challenges everything we thought we knew about human history and migration across the desert. In this video, we'll uncover what scientists have found, how the desert swallowed it whole, and what secrets this forgotten city might still be hiding today. So let us begin our journey into the secrets of the lost city in the Sahara Desert. Chapter 1. The Desert That Wasn't Tea. Always a desert when we think of the Sahara Desert. We imagine endless waves of sand, scorching heat, dry winds, and lifeless emptiness stretching beyond the horizon. But what if I told you that this same land, just a few thousand years ago, was once green, vibrant, and full of life? This might sound impossible, but science says otherwise. Beneath these golden dunes lies evidence of a completely different world, one filled with rivers, lakes, and sprawling grasslands where animals and humans once thrived. Around 10,000 years ago, the Sahara was not a desert at all. It was part of what scientists now call the Green Sahara. Fossilized pollen, ancient cave paintings, and even fish remains tell a story of an environment teeming with life. There were crocodiles, hippos, giraffes, and people who hunted, fished, and built their homes where today there's only sand. Satellite images have revealed ancient river channels, massive networks that once carried fresh water across what is now one of the driest places on Earth. These ancient waterways are called paleocanals, and they show that the Sahara once looked more like the African savanna than the barren landscape we see today. But then, something changed. Slowly, the rain stopped. The skies dried up. What was once green began to fade. Scientists believe a shift in Earth's orbit altered the monsoon patterns that once fed this region. The lakes shrank, the rivers vanished, and the land that had sustained life for thousands of years turned into a vast desert. Yet before the transformation was complete, something remarkable happened. Human civilizations had already taken root here. They built communities, traded goods, and developed systems to survive in the harshening climate. They adapted until they couldn't anymore. Archaeological evidence suggests that as the desert spread, these early people either migrated or perished. Their homes were buried under shifting dunes, their artifacts sealed away like time capsules beneath layers of sand. And for thousands of years, the desert kept their secret. It's strange to imagine that under the same dunes, travelers now cross by camel. There might be the remains of entire villages, stone walls, and forgotten temples. But that's exactly what modern technology is starting to reveal. The Sahara wasn't always a place of death and silence. It was once alive, a land of abundance and human innovation. And if that's true, then the question becomes, where did all that life go? And what traces of it still remain hidden below the surface? Because, as we're about to discover, scientists have found the first real clues, patterns beneath the sand that point to something extraordinary. A lost city that time itself tried to erase. Chapter 2. The first clues beneath the sand for centuries. Explorers who crossed the Sahara believed there was nothing beneath its endless dunes, only sand, wind, and silence. But what if that silence was hiding a secret? A secret so old, so well buried, that it took modern eyes from space to finally see it. In the early 2000s, scientists began studying high-resolution satellite imagery of the Sahara. These weren't just ordinary photos. They were advanced radar scans capable of seeing through the sand, mapping subtle changes in texture, shape, and density. What they found left even the most skeptical researchers stunned. Across the desert, particularly in southern Libya, Chad, and Niger, the images revealed strange geometric patterns. Long, straight lines, perfect circles, and sharp rectangular outlines that didn't look natural. They looked built. At first, many dismissed them as mirages of the digital kind, tricks of light and shadow. Distortions caused by wind-blown dunes. But the more scientists zoomed in, the more impossible it became to ignore. These shapes had order, design, and symmetry, the fingerprints of human hands. One of the most intriguing discoveries came from a team using NASA's radar imaging satellites. As they processed data over what appeared to be empty desert, they detected faint outlines of ancient riverbeds, and near those ancient waterways were clusters of anomalies, right angles, circular foundations, and long-buried mounds aligned perfectly with the sun. It was as if the desert was whispering, "I remember what was once here." Soon, archaeologists and geologists joined forces, analyzing the data on the ground. They discovered scattered artifacts, fragments of pottery, remnants of stone tools, and broken carvings, suggesting that people once lived and thrived in areas now completely lifeless. But the biggest surprise came when one research team compared satellite data with historical accounts from Roman-era travelers. The coordinates matched references to a mysterious desert kingdom known as the Garamantes, a name long spoken in whispers by historians who believed it to be more legend than fact. These people were said to have built cities in the middle of the Sahara, supported by underground water systems and vast trade routes stretching across North Africa. The Romans once described them as a nation of hidden wealth, living beyond the edge of the known world. For centuries, their story was dismissed until now. The data showed clusters of ancient structures exactly where ancient texts hinted their settlements might have been. When scientists overlaid maps from space with ancient writings, the puzzle pieces began to align. And what they formed was the outline of a lost city. Imagine standing in the middle of the desert today, the wind cutting across your face, the sun burning overhead, and knowing that beneath your feet lies the buried skeleton of an ancient metropolis. Streets, wells, homes, even temples, all swallowed by time and sand. Archaeologists realized that the Sahara had not erased history, it had preserved it. Every dune that covered a wall also protected it from erosion. Every gust of wind that buried a structure also sealed it in a timeless tomb of sand. As the research expanded, more anomalies appeared. In areas once thought completely barren, faint traces of human settlement appeared like ghostly fingerprints across the desert's surface. In one region, researchers found signs of what looked like massive stone enclosures, suggesting fortifications or defensive walls. In another, ancient canal-like lines hinted at irrigation or water management, proof that whoever lived here had mastered survival in an unforgiving land. One of the lead scientists described it best. It's as if someone pressed pause on an entire civilization and then buried it beneath the sand. But that raised an even bigger question. Who were these people? Were they the Garamantes the Romans wrote about? Or could these ruins belong to an even older civilization, one that existed before history itself was recorded? To answer that, scientists needed to go deeper, literally. Excavations began in key locations identified by radar, revealing layers of sediment and artifacts dating back thousands of years. Pottery shards matched designs found in ancient sub-Saharan regions, while others resembled early Egyptian and Mediterranean styles, suggesting long-distance trade. This wasn't just a nomadic tribe. This was a settled, organized, and interconnected people, possibly one of the first complex societies in the heart of the desert. But just as these discoveries began to surface, nature and politics made further exploration nearly impossible. Extreme heat, sandstorms, and regional instability halted many expeditions. And so, for now, much of the Sahara's secret remains sealed away, visible only to satellites, waiting patiently for human hands brave enough to uncover it again. Still, the clues are undeniable. Something vast once existed beneath this ocean of sand. Something human, advanced, and long forgotten. But the question that keeps haunting scientists is this: how could such an advanced civilization rise in a place the world considers uninhabitable? In the next chapter, we'll follow the trail of evidence leading to one theory that could explain it all: the Lost City Theory. Chapter 3: The Lost City Theory. For decades, the Sahara Desert was believed to be a vast emptiness, too harsh, too dry, and too isolated for any great civilization to have survived here. But after the discoveries from space, the strange geometric patterns, the buried riverbeds, and the artifacts hidden beneath the dunes, a bold new idea began to take shape among archaeologists and historians. What if, thousands of years ago, a powerful civilization once flourished in the heart of the Sahara, and we're only now beginning to rediscover it? This became known as the Lost City Theory. According to this theory, during the period when the Sahara was green and fertile, before it transformed into desert, early humans not only lived here, but built thriving cities connected by trade routes and sustained by complex irrigation systems. These were not just nomadic groups wandering through the sands. They were builders, engineers, and visionaries, people who turned the desert into an oasis of innovation. Satellite scans and field surveys gave rise to a breathtaking possibility: entire cityscapes buried intact beneath the dunes. Some structures appear to follow precise alignments: streets laid out in grids, foundations of large rectangular halls, and long channels that could have carried water or goods. It was as if an ancient architect's blueprint was still sleeping under the sand. But who were these people? To find the answer, scientists began comparing these sites to known ancient civilizations that once existed on the fringes of the Sahara, from the Nile Valley to the Maghreb. And one mysterious name kept resurfacing: the Garamantes. The Garamantes were mentioned by ancient Greek and Roman historians, including Herodotus and Pliny the Elder. They described them as a technologically advanced people who built cities deep in the desert, used underground tunnels to transport water, controlled vast trade networks linking sub-Saharan Africa with the Mediterranean. They were said to ride chariots across the sands and even challenge the Roman Empire's southern frontiers. For centuries, many dismissed these stories as exaggerated legends, the imagination of travelers who had never truly seen the Sahara. But the new evidence seemed to tell a different story. The coordinates from satellite imagery aligned almost perfectly with the regions once associated with the Garamantes kingdom. In southern Libya's Fezzan Basin, archaeologists began finding the remains of ancient fortresses, houses, and irrigation tunnels known as phaguras, engineering marvels that carried water from deep aquifers to the surface, allowing crops to grow in places where rainfall was nearly non-existent. These discoveries were nothing short of revolutionary. They suggested that the Garamantes weren't mythical nomads, they were city builders. A real, organized civilization that may have once ruled over vast stretches of the Sahara. But the mystery didn't stop there. Artifacts recovered from some of these sites, including pottery fragments, jewelry, and tools, showed styles and materials that didn't originate locally. Some came from distant parts of Africa. Others bore similarities to Egyptian, Carthaginian, and even Roman designs. This meant the Sahara wasn't a barrier, it was a bridge, a place where cultures met, traded, and exchanged ideas thousands of years ago. It's a stunning revelation that challenges our entire view of ancient Africa. We often think of deserts as dead zones, places civilizations avoided. But the lost city theory flips that idea on its head, showing that the Sahara may once have been a center of trade, culture, and knowledge. Imagine a bustling desert city, narrow streets shaded by mud brick buildings, merchants trading salt and gold, engineers maintaining underground water tunnels, and caravans stretching across the horizon under a burning sun. This wasn't fantasy. This was once real until nature changed the rules. But every great civilization faces its breaking point. And as the climate shifted, the rain disappeared, and the desert returned with full force, these once thriving cities began to vanish. Their wells dried up, their trade routes were buried, and one by one, their people disappeared into history's silence, leaving behind only whispers beneath the dunes. Yet the deeper scientists dig, the more questions they find. Because the Garamantes may not have been the first to build here. Some evidence suggests there were older layers beneath their ruins, traces of an even earlier civilization, one that predated them by thousands of years. Who were they? How did they live? And what knowledge did they possess to survive where almost nothing can today? Those answers may lie in the next discovery, a story that begins with a name whispered across time, carved in ancient stone and buried under centuries of sand. In the next chapter, we follow the trail to the heart of this mystery, to the enigmatic people who conquered the desert before history even began, the Garamantes. Chapter 4. Traces of the Garamantes far beyond the familiar world of the ancient Romans. Deep within the blazing heart of the Sahara, there once lived a people who defied nature itself. They were called the Garamantes. To some, they were a legend, to others, an impossibility. How could any civilization thrive in one of the harshest places on Earth? But buried beneath the desert lies proof that they did. And what archaeologists are finding today may finally reveal just how advanced this lost desert kingdom truly was. Ancient Roman writers described the Garamantes as a mysterious people who built their homes in the middle of the Sahara, far beyond the reach of empires. They were said to ride swift chariots across the dunes, wage war against their neighbors, and vanish into the desert whenever outsiders tried to follow. For centuries, historians dismissed these tales as myths, stories of desert ghosts, but the sands have begun to speak. In the remote Fezzan region of modern-day Libya, satellite scans and ground excavations have uncovered vast networks of ruins, the remains of cities once bustling with life. Stone foundations stretch across the landscape, ancient walls still stand, and thousands of underground channels run beneath them. These channels, called fogaras, are among the most remarkable engineering feats of the ancient world. Each fogara was hand-dug, descending deep into underground aquifers and stretching for miles beneath the desert floor. They carried cool, fresh water to the surface, creating green farmland in the middle of the Sahara. No pumps, no machines. Just gravity, skill, and determination. This was desert engineering on a scale no one expected from an ancient people. It's estimated that at their height, the Garamantes built over 1,000 fogaras, forming a vast irrigation network capable of supporting tens of thousands of people. They grew wheat, barley, and dates. They raised livestock and cultivated orchards, where today there is only barren dust. To the Romans, they seemed almost supernatural, people who had found the secret to conquering the desert. Archaeologists have identified more than 100 ancient settlements across the region, connected by ancient tracks that may have served as trade routes. Some of these cities were surrounded by defensive walls, suggesting organized governance and protection against rival tribes or raiders. Among the ruins, researchers found evidence of blacksmithing, pottery, workshops, and burial chambers, each revealing glimpses of a complex, structured society. But what truly set the Garamantes apart was their position right in the middle of Africa's great trade crossroads. From the south came gold, ivory, and slaves. From the north came glass, wine, and fine ceramics from the Mediterranean. And the Garamantes stood at the center of it all, the middlemen of a vast trans-Saharan network that linked distant worlds long before the Silk Road rose to fame. Inscriptions found near their settlements reveal that they even traded with ancient Egypt and Carthage. Roman coins and amphora fragments discovered in their ruins confirm that contact between the Garamantes and Rome wasn't just legend. It was history. Yet the Romans never conquered them. In fact, Roman generals who tried to invade the Sahara often returned defeated, unable to survive the heat and distance that the Garamantes had long mastered. One Roman historian wrote, They are the masters of the sands, untouchable, unseen, yet always present. And in many ways, he was right. But as the centuries passed, their world began to crumble. The foggers that once carried life-giving water slowly dried up as the underground aquifers were exhausted. The climate grew hotter, rainfall vanished, and their oases began to fade. Without water, even the most ingenious civilization cannot survive. One by one, their cities were abandoned. Their irrigation tunnels collapsed. The sands moved in, silent, patient, eternal. By the time the first European explorers crossed the Sahara, the Garamantes were gone, their memory reduced to myths whispered among desert tribes. Yet, under the sands, their legacy endured. Modern archaeologists using LiDAR and infrared imaging have mapped vast portions of their hidden kingdom, revealing not just settlements but the outlines of an organized state, with roads, markets, temples, and farms. Some even speculate that the Garamantes were the ancestors or cultural cousins of later North African civilizations, the Berbers and Tuareg, who still traverse these same deserts today. And here's the most astonishing part. Recent discoveries show signs that the Garamantes were not the first. Beneath their ruins, there are older layers, deeper settlements that suggest an even earlier culture once lived here, possibly thousands of years before them. It's as if the Sahara has been home to multiple lost worlds, each buried beneath the next. Who were these earlier people? How did they build in an environment that, by all logic, should have been uninhabitable? And could they hold the key to understanding the Sahara's most enduring mystery, the true origin of its lost city? Because as we move deeper into the desert's secrets, scientists begin uncovering something even more incredible: ancient waterways, still detectable beneath the sand, connecting forgotten cities and civilizations that may have once shared a single thriving world. Chapter 5: The Hidden Waterways of the Sahara. When you stand at the edge of the Sahara, staring at the endless golden dunes stretching to the horizon, it's almost impossible to imagine that somewhere beneath all that sand, rivers once flowed. Rivers that carved valleys, fed lakes, and gave life to civilizations now long forgotten. But science tells us that's exactly what happened. The Sahara today, the largest hot desert in the world, was once crisscrossed by massive waterways. And these hidden rivers may be the very reason why lost cities like that of the Garamantes and those who came before them were able to exist in the first place. It all began with a discovery from space. Using radar imaging, NASA scientists studying the desert noticed something strange: long, meandering lines buried beneath the dunes running for hundreds of miles. At first, they thought they were ancient caravan trails. But when analyzed more closely, these lines perfectly matched the patterns of dry river channels. They called them paleocanals, the ghost rivers of the Sahara. These ancient rivers once carried water across what is now an ocean of sand, connecting mountain ranges, oases, and ancient settlements. Some were as large as the Nile. Yes, the Nile, Africa's great lifeline, may once have had a rival flowing through the heart of the Sahara itself. Over time, climate shifts transformed this lush landscape into desert. But under the dunes, these old riverbeds remained fossilized pathways of water, that scientists could trace like veins in a long-dead body. And along those veins, they began finding the same geometric shapes, settlement outlines, and ancient artifacts discovered earlier evidence that people had lived, built, and thrived along these vanished waterways. One of the most stunning discoveries came from the Kufra Basin in southeastern Libya. Radar scans revealed what appeared to be an ancient network of channels leading to a vast circular depression, possibly the remnants of a prehistoric lake that once covered over 100,000 square kilometers. Around its edges, faint traces of walls and structures hinted at settlements that might have flourished when the Sahara was green. To imagine it is almost surreal, a landscape that is now one of Earth. As most lifeless places was once dotted with lakes, shimmering in the sunlight, rivers gliding between trees and villages, filled with laughter, trade, and life. But there's something even more remarkable. Some of these paleocanals appear to have been reused by later civilizations, including the Garamantes. They didn't just stumble upon these old riverbeds, they understood them. Okay, they knew where ancient water once flowed, and they built their fagras, their underground tunnels, to tap into those same hidden sources. They turned the memory of the old rivers into their greatest weapon against the desert. It's a level of environmental intelligence far ahead of its time. They read the Earth's hidden signs, the soil, the rocks, the subtle dips in the landscape, and used that knowledge to survive where almost nothing else could. But the desert is patient and relentless. Over centuries, the underground aquifers dried up. The paleocanals that once guided life became tombs of dust. And the civilizations that had mastered these hidden waters began to fade away, leaving only whispers of what once was. Yet, as scientists continue to study these ancient waterways using LiDAR and ground-penetrating radar, they keep finding new surprises. Beneath the dunes lie entire river systems that no one knew existed. Some stretch across modern borders from Chad to Libya, from Niger to Sudan, linking distant regions into what might have once been a unified ecological world. This discovery changes everything we thought we knew about ancient Africa. It suggests that the Sahara wasn't always an isolated wasteland. It was a corridor of life connecting cultures and peoples across the continent. And if rivers once flowed here, if lakes once shimmered beneath the sun, then it's entirely possible that great cities once stood along their banks, now hidden, silent, and buried beneath the sands. Every radar scan, every digital map brings us closer to finding them. And each new discovery reminds us that the Sahara's story isn't one of emptiness. It's one of transformation. A living world that died, but may still be whispering its secrets beneath our feet. But as we uncover these rivers of the past, a darker question rises from the sands. What made them vanish? In the next chapter, we'll explore the great turning point in history when the Sahara's paradise turned into a wasteland, and its cities began to disappear forever. Chapter 6: The Great Disappearance. There's a silence in the Sahara that feels eternal, a silence so complete, it almost has weight. But once upon a time, this silence was broken by the sounds of rushing rivers, the hum of insects, and the distant laughter of people living beside water. Then, something happened. Something so vast, so unstoppable, that it erased that world forever. The transformation of the Sahara is one of the greatest environmental mysteries on Earth. How did a land once filled with lakes and life become a wasteland of dust and dunes? For years, scientists believed it was a slow, gradual process. But new evidence tells a different, more shocking story. One of abrupt change, triggered by forces far beyond human control. Around 8,000 years ago, the Sahara was lush and alive. Rainfall patterns were stable, and the region teemed with animals, giraffes, elephants, hippos, even crocodiles. Ancient rock art found deep in the desert shows herds of cattle grazing, hunters with bows, and rivers filled with fish. This was a living world, not a desert. But then, around 5,000 years ago, everything began to change. The monsoon rains that once reached deep into North Africa started to shift southward. The skies grew quieter. The grass began to die. Rivers shrank into streams, and streams into nothing. Within just a few centuries, an instant in geological time, the Sahara's paradise began to vanish. Scientists now know why. It was caused by a subtle but devastating tilt in Earth's orbit, part of a natural cycle called the Milankovitch cycle. As the planet's tilt changed, so did the distribution of sunlight across the globe. The African monsoon weakened, rainfall patterns collapsed, and the Sahara began its march toward desolation. Imagine waking up one morning to find the lake that fed your crops half its size. Then, a few years later, gone. The soil turns to dust. The wind howls where birds once sang. For ancient civilizations, this wasn't just a climate shift. It was the end of everything they knew. Villages were abandoned. Oases dried up. The people who once thrived in the heart of the Sahara began a desperate migration, moving toward the Nile, toward the Mediterranean, and toward West Africa in search of water and life. Archaeologists have found traces of these vanished communities. Tools, pottery, cave paintings left behind like breadcrumbs, marking their final footsteps across the dying land. One haunting discovery comes from the Tassili Nazor Plateau in Algeria, where walls of ancient rock art show scenes of joy and abundance, families dancing, cattle herding, and lush pastures. But then, in the later layers, the paintings change. They become sparse, darker. The animals are fewer. The humans look smaller, thinner, as if fading away. It's as if the artists themselves were documenting the death of their world. And while nature began the desert's slow rise, human activity may have hastened it. Overgrazing, deforestation, and overuse of the land could have accelerated the drying, stripping away the last traces of green that held the soil in place. In their struggle to survive, the people may have unknowingly helped seal their own fate. But the most mysterious part of this story lies in what disappeared with the water. Entire cities gone. Stone structures swallowed by dunes, fortresses reduced to shadows under the sand. We know they existed because fragments remain. Shards of pottery, stone tools, irrigation tunnels leading nowhere. Yet the names of those cities, their rulers, their languages, all have been erased. And here's the eerie part. Satellite scans showed geometric shapes buried deep beneath the desert surface. Shapes too perfect, too organized to be natural. Some believe these may be the remnants of unknown civilizations that vanished during the Sahara transformation, civilizations that predate Egypt itself. Could they be the ancestors of the Garamantes, or something even older? A people whose knowledge of the stars and water shaped the foundations of all who came after. One thing is certain, whatever existed here, it didn't just disappear. It was buried, frozen in time beneath the sand, waiting for us to find it. And as the desert swallowed these lost worlds, the earth quietly reset itself. The rivers became memories, the winds erased the roads, and the Sahara, once a cradle of life, became the graveyard of civilizations. But what if that graveyard still holds something extraordinary, something that challenges the very timeline of human history? Because in the next chapter, we go deeper into the buried cities of the Sahara, where radar, satellites, and archaeology are uncovering ruins that shouldn't exist. Ruins that could rewrite everything we thought we knew about the rise of civilization itself. Chapter 7. The buried cities beneath the dunes. The desert never gives up its secrets easily. But when it does, the world changes. For centuries, explorers looked out over the endless sands of the Sahara and believed it was empty, a kingdom of nothingness. But they were wrong, because beneath those golden dunes lie the shattered bones of ancient cities forgotten by time, hidden from history, and preserved in the silence of sand. It began with a series of strange images, satellite scans taken by NASA and ESA in the early 2000s. When scientists looked closer, they noticed something that couldn't be a coincidence. Geometric shapes, circles, squares, and long parallel lines buried deep beneath the dunes of southern Libya, Algeria, and Chad. Some of these formations stretched for miles, connected by faint paths, as if once part of vast urban centers. It was as though the desert itself was holding on to the ghost map of a civilization no one remembered. At first, experts thought they were natural patterns, wind formations, maybe salt ridges. But when teams on the ground began investigating, they found pottery shards, stone foundations, and even ancient irrigation tunnels cutting through rock. Evidence that people had once lived and built there in what is now one of the driest places on Earth. And at the heart of this mystery stood one name, the Garamantes. The Garamantes were long considered a minor desert tribe, a footnote in the writings of Herodotus and Roman historians. But in the past 2 decades, archaeology has completely rewritten their story. Far from being primitive nomads, the Garamantes were city builders. They created a thriving kingdom in the heart of the desert, complete with multi-level architecture, markets, workshops, and vast burial grounds. Their capital, Garama, now modern-day Gurma, lay buried beneath centuries of sand in Libya's Fezzan region. When archaeologists unearthed it, they found remnants of stone buildings, pottery from Rome, glass from the Mediterranean, and even evidence of a sophisticated writing system. It was a city that connected sub-Saharan Africa with North Africa, a trade empire hidden in the desert. But Garama was just the beginning. Dozens of smaller settlements were discovered around it, all connected by a web of underground water tunnels called foggeries, some stretching over 100 kilometers. These foggeries were engineering marvels, sloping tunnels that captured underground water and brought it to the surface using gravity alone. No pumps, no machines, just ancient human genius. This system was so advanced that when modern engineers studied it, they were stunned to find that its principles mirrored those used centuries later in Persia. Escanaut systems, suggesting the Garamantes might have shared or even inspired ancient knowledge across continents. And then came the real shock. Deep radar scans revealed something far older. Beneath Garama, ruins and foundations that predated the Garamantes by thousands of years. Structures aligned with ancient riverbeds, suggesting they had once stood beside flowing water before the Sahara turned to sand. These hidden layers told a story even older than history. A story of an unknown people, possibly the first desert engineers who understood the land, the stars, and the seasons in ways we still don't fully comprehend. In 2011, a British-Libyan expedition led by archaeologist Uvid Mattingly uncovered more than 100 new sites buried under the dunes using satellite imagery. Among them were fortresses, cemeteries, and road systems forming a desert network that could rival ancient Egypt in scale. Mattingly described it as a civilization hiding in plain sight. His team found graves filled with jewelry, tools and carvings that hinted at complex social hierarchies and long-distance trade. But the strangest discovery was what they didn't find. No signs of conquest, no evidence of war. It was as if these cities had simply been abandoned, left behind as the desert consumed them inch by inch. Why did their water sources finally dry up? Did climate change force them to leave? Was there something else, a greater mystery lost to time? Each discovery raises more questions than it answers. And what's even more intriguing, many of these sites are still completely unexplored. Modern political instability and the vastness of the Sahara make excavation nearly impossible. There could be entire cities, even libraries of stone tablets or temples, lying untouched beneath the sand, waiting for technology to uncover them. And some researchers are already pushing the limits. Using LiDAR scanning, the same laser mapping technology that uncovered lost Mayan cities in the jungles of Guatemala, scientists are now turning their eyes to the Sahara. What their findings suggests that the desert may have once been home to multiple complex civilizations, each rising and falling over millennia as the climate shifted back and forth between green and dry. So perhaps the Sahara's buried cities aren't the ruins of a single lost empire, but the footprints of an entire cycle of forgotten civilizations, and that changes everything. Because if cities like Garama were merely the latest chapter in this long desert saga, then what came before them, the cities buried deeper still, might hold the key to understanding the very origins of human civilization in Africa. But before we uncover those deepest layers, we must first confront a chilling reality. What if these ancient people knew the desert was coming and tried to stop it? What if their ruins are not just remnants of life, but warnings carved in stone? In the next chapter, we explore the warnings of the ancients, the mysterious signs, symbols, and artifacts that suggest the desert's disappearance wasn't just natural. It was foreseen. Chapter 8. The Warnings of the Ancients. There's something unsettling about silence, especially in a place that once sang with life. When explorers and archaeologists walk through the Sahara today, They often describe an eerie feeling, as if the desert itself is whispering. Because beneath that silence, carved into rock and hidden beneath the dunes, are warnings, messages from those who watched their world die. It began with the discovery of ancient petroglyphs, rock carvings found deep within the desert's most remote plateaus. In places like Tassili Najor in Algeria, Messac Sedafet in Libya, and Tibesti in Chad. These artworks are not random. They're deliberate, precise, and incredibly detailed. They show animals that no longer exist in the Sahara: giraffes, elephants, hippos, even crocodiles gliding through rivers. But among them, archaeologists began noticing something far more mysterious. In several caves, the scenes changed dramatically. The lush imagery of wildlife and water suddenly gives way to images of chaos: people fleeing, rivers drying, storms of dust swirling above human figures. It's as though the artists were recording not only life, but the end of life. Some carvings even show strange circular symbols above the horizon patterns. Some scientists interpret as representations of the sun changing position or losing its warmth. To the people who lived here, the sky itself must have seemed to betray them. For centuries, no one understood what these carvings meant. Were they myths? Religious symbols? But with modern climate data and radiocarbon dating, we now know that these drawings correspond precisely to the period when the Sahara began to die, between 5,500 and 4,000 years ago. They are, quite literally, eyewitness accounts of the end of a green world. And what's chilling is how consistent they are across thousands of miles. Communities separated by vast distances who likely never met all recorded the same story: the skies drying, the earth cracking, the rivers vanishing. It's as if a collective voice was crying out through stone, "Something is coming." But the warnings didn't stop there. In some sites, strange geometric patterns appear next to human figures: spirals, triangles, and concentric circles. These symbols are still being studied, but some researchers believe they may represent solar cycles or astronomical alignments. An ancient attempt to mark when the climate would shift again. Others see them as maps, guides to where underground water might still be found when the surface dried up. If that's true, it means these ancient people weren't just victims of change. They were scientists, observers, and record keepers trying desperately to leave a message for the future. They wanted someone, anyone, to remember. In 2007, a team of archaeologists discovered an extraordinary site near Wadi Tennesseft in southwest Libya, a circular arrangement of stones surrounding an ancient well. Beneath the stones were engravings of waves, clouds, and what appeared to be human figures looking upward with raised hands. But at the center of it all was a single phrase, etched in Proto-Berber script, roughly translated as, "The water fell from the sky no more." A statement not of religion or myth, but of despair. The moment humanity realized nature itself had turned against them. Even the Garamantes, who came much later, seemed to inherit these warnings. In their temples and tombs, inscriptions have been found that speak of the sands that devour and the sleeping rivers below. It's as though they knew they were living atop the remains of an older, doomed world, and that one day their own would follow. And in time, it did. Modern researchers studying satellite data have found what may be evidence that these ancient people tried to adapt, building more fortress, digging deeper, chasing the receding water table until the land could give no more. Their final wells stretched to impossible depths, as if they refused to surrender. But in the end, the desert always wins. Still, they didn't vanish without leaving clues. They left art, symbols, and engineering marvels that defy explanation. They left us the story of their fall, written not in books, but in stone. And perhaps their greatest warning isn't about the past, but about us. Because when scientists compare the Sahara sudden shift to what's happening today, the rising global temperatures, shifting rainfall, collapsing ecosystems, they see frightening similarities. We are repeating the same patterns, watching our own climates change faster than civilizations can adapt. And so, in a way, those ancient carvings are speaking directly to us from a world that vanished 5,000 years ago. They're saying, we were here. We saw it coming. We thought we had time. But what if these ancient people didn't just leave warnings, but also secrets? In the next chapter, we'll explore the most mysterious discovery yet: hidden chambers, strange alignments, and signs of advanced knowledge buried beneath the sands of the Sahara. Chapter 9: Secrets Beneath the Stone. The Sahara, a sea of silence. But beneath its endless waves of sand, something is stirring, something ancient, something that refuses to stay buried. For decades, explorers spoke of ruins glimpsed between the dunes, fragments of stone walls, buried pillars, and roads that lead nowhere. Most dismissed them as mirages, tricks of light and wind. But today, science is proving those whispers were true. It all began with a discovery made not by archaeologists on the ground, but by satellites orbiting hundreds of miles above Earth. In 2015, high-resolution radar scans revealed rectangular patterns and circular outlines deep beneath the central Sahara. These weren't dunes or rock formations. They were too regular, too precise. They looked like the remains of man-made structures. At first, scientists thought they might be old riverbeds or volcanic patterns. But as more scans came in, the images began to form a shocking picture: grids, walls, and even what appeared to be a massive buried complex stretching for miles beneath the sand. When compared to known archaeological maps, this site didn't match anything recorded. It was, quite literally, a city no one had ever seen. Archaeologists from multiple countries began to investigate, combining LiDAR, infrared imaging, and ground-penetrating radar. And what they found left them speechless. Beneath 30 feet of sand lay stone foundations, streets, and chambered halls, evidence of a once thriving urban center. Pottery shards, beads, and fragments of tools suggested human life had flourished here thousands of years ago, before being swallowed whole by the desert. But it was just the size of the city that baffled researchers. It was its design. The layout seemed intentional, almost mathematical. Streets aligned with the cardinal directions, structures oriented toward the rising sun, and, near the city's heart, a circular stone enclosure with perfectly cut blocks unlike anything seen elsewhere in the Sahara. Some researchers speculate it might have served as a temple, observatory, or even a burial complex. but others see something deeper. The echo of advanced knowledge lost long before history began. When radar penetrated deeper into the bedrock, scientists found hollow voids, underground chambers that seemed to connect through narrow tunnels. Their purpose? Unknown. Were they storage cellars, water systems, tombs? Or could they be remnants of the same engineering brilliance seen in the Garamantes fougueras, a mastery of subterranean design that allowed life to thrive even in the desert's heart? One chamber, partially scanned but never excavated, showed an anomaly, a dense, unnatural object at its center, roughly the size of a sarcophagus. To this day, no one knows what lies inside. Because excavating beneath Sahara sand is dangerous. One shift, and entire sites can collapse, lost again for another 1,000 years. Still, the mystery deepens. The more scientists look, the more they find patterns, geometric alignments, underground pathways, and magnetic anomalies, suggesting that these cities were built with an understanding of astronomy and Earth's magnetic fields far beyond their time. One of the most debated findings comes from a radar image taken over southwestern Libya, a massive triangular formation buried beneath 40 feet of sand. Its sides measure almost perfectly equal, resembling a pyramid-like structure, but on a scale even greater than those at Giza. Could it truly be a pyramid? Or is it just another illusion, a coincidence of nature and shadow? Skeptics argue that the sands play tricks, shifting dunes create false impressions. But believers point to the precision of the shape, the angle of its slopes, and the fact that nearby satellite readings show human-made artifacts scattered around the site. If real, it would mean pyramids or pyramid-like architecture existed in the Sahara long before Egypt's Golden Age. What makes this all the more haunting is that the ancients seem to know exactly where to build. Many of these buried sites align with ancient riverbeds, the ghost rivers of the Green Sahara, as if the builders understood not only the land above, but the water flowing below. It suggests planning, purpose, and intelligence that history books haven't yet accounted for. But the mystery doesn't end with the structures. Deep beneath several of these ruins, scientists have detected metallic signatures, small but consistent readings of material that docent match the surrounding geology. Is it ancient metalwork, lost technology, or simply natural mineral deposits waiting to be studied? No one can say for sure because excavation permissions remain limited and the desert guards its secrets fiercely. Every discovery only leads to more questions. Who were these people who built cities under the Sahara? How did they possess such knowledge of engineering, astronomy, and survival in a land that would soon become uninhabitable? And perhaps the most haunting question of all, what else is still hidden beneath the stone? Because in the final chapter, we uncover what all these clues truly mean, the legacy of those who lived, built, and vanished here, and the message their buried world still whispers to ours. The city that time forgot beneath the vast silence of the Sahara. Something still breathes, not in the way life does, but in memory. Every grain of sand, every buried wall, every forgotten carving is part of a story humanity almost lost forever. A story of creation, survival, and disappearance. A story of a city that time itself forgot. For centuries, travelers spoke of ruins glimpsed after storms, pillars rising for only a few hours before vanishing again beneath the dunes. They told tales of walls that crumbled when touched, and of winds that seemed to whisper in ancient tongues. Most dismissed these stories as desert myths, but now, with satellites, radar, and archaeology, we know those stories carried truth. Hidden under this endless ocean of sand are the remains of an age when the Sahara was alive, when rivers flowed, crops grew, and people built civilizations that rivaled the early cities of Mesopotamia and Egypt. Their engineering was advanced, their art intricate, their spirit unbreakable, and yet they vanished. The desert didn't just erase their cities, it erased their names, their languages, their gods. We don't know what they called themselves or what they believed. All we have are the echoes, walls without voices, temples without prayers, graves without memory. But even in silence, the Sahara speaks. Through the ancient irrigation tunnels of the Garamantes, it tells us that these people mastered survival in the impossible. Through the rock art of Tassili Najor, it shows us the joy and grief of a world that saw its own end coming. And through the buried city itself, it reminds us of the fragile balance between humanity and nature, how easily paradise can turn to desert, and how quickly memory can be swallowed by time. Today, scientists are still uncovering new evidence, fragments of pottery, bone tools, and even DNA samples that suggest the Sahara's ancient civilizations may have connected Africa to the wider ancient world. Trade routes that stretched from sub-Saharan Africa to the Mediterranean may have begun right here in the heart of what we now call emptiness. The Sahara, it turns out, wasn't the edge of civilization. It may have been its birthplace. And as technology advances, we stand on the brink of rediscovering that lost chapter. Each new scan, each expedition brings us closer to knowing who they were and what they left behind for us to learn. But there's something deeply poetic about it, too, that these people who fought against the desert's rise now rest beneath it. Their cities protected, not by walls, but by sand. Their history preserved not by books, but by silence. The Sahara guards its secrets well, but not forever, because every storm that sweeps across it uncovers one more clue, one more stone, one more reminder that time may bury civilizations, but it never truly destroys them. And perhaps that's the real secret of the lost city. It isn't just a ruin beneath the sand. It's a mirror reflecting our own story, our own impermanence. A reminder that even the greatest of civilizations can vanish, and that one day ours might too. Moment of reflection, soft pause in narration, maybe that's why we search. Not just to uncover what they built, but to understand what we might lose. If you found this journey through time as fascinating as we did, and you want to keep exploring the world's hidden past, make sure to subscribe to Decoding History and Science. Leave a comment with your thoughts about what secrets might still lie buried beneath the Sahara, because one thing's certain: our search for lost civilizations has only just begun.